Hello and welcome to my final speech. How many of us have been asked to give a eulogy? It's a heavy thing paying tribute to someone who has passed. Now imagine if that weight encompassed the losses of an entire people. How best would you ease their pain, honor their loss, and inspire their hopes for the future? Through his carefully crafted funeral oration, Pericles persuaded the people of Athens that she must be defended at all costs, turning what was to be a simple speech honoring the dead into one of the greatest democratic calls to action of all time. Today I intend to examine this classic speech with respect to the four aspects of the rhetorical situation: the occasion, the audience, the speaker, and the speech. I hope to give you an idea of what made this speech different from its predecessors and why it endures even today. The ancient Greek historian Thucydides chronicled the long struggle between Sparta and Athens in his History of the Peloponnesian War. At the end of each year of the war, the Athenians held a public funeral honoring those who had given their lives in the service of Athens. The funeral customarily concluded with a speech by a respected citizen. Being an extremely reverent and somber occasion, selection of an appropriate orator was of paramount concern. According to Thucydides' account, in the year 430 BC, the Athenians chose their general, Pericles, to give this speech. Though he held a somewhat elevated position in Athenian society, Pericles' funeral oration brought his skill as an orator to the forefront. Pericles was a great supporter of democracy and a prominent statesman. He was a staunch promoter of literature and the arts, and according to a BBC special on ancient Greece, he is largely responsible for Athens' position at the center of culture and education at the time. Coming from a position of affluence and influence, he was eventually appointed as a general of Athens, a position he held for 14 consecutive years, and he was involved in all of the major events of the era. Pericles' funeral oration turned out to make brilliant use of audience analysis, and in turn appealed to the audience in a way that had never been attempted before. The audience for the funeral oration was no less than the entire city of Athens. This meant that the speech must address the fact that while Pericles was a much-loved general, there were many citizens who didn't agree with this point of view. In addition to the difficulty of addressing an audience with a large faction of critical listeners, the audience's grief must be addressed as well. Since the city was still at war, the speech must also appeal to the philosophical position of statism, to encourage those who remained to continue to fight for their beloved city and all that it represented. According to a PBS documentary entitled The Greeks, Pericles' break from traditionality in his format was a groundbreaking success. With his audience in mind, Pericles crafted an intricate, unique, and inspiring speech that gave the people of Athens strength and hope for the future. Pericles' funeral oration is unique in that it departed from the traditional format of the funeral speech, which usually lauded the great military achievements of Athens' past. This speech focused on Athens in the present, praising Athens' merits and her people, her qualities that made her unique, thus appealing to the audience's sense of pride and patriotism. Pericles speaks glowingly of Athens, saying that our system of government does not copy the institutions of our neighbors. It is more a case of our being a model to others than of our imitating anyone else. Our constitution is called a democracy because power is in the hands not of a minority, but of the whole people. In our homes, we find a beauty and a good taste which delights us every day and which drives away our cares. Our love of what is beautiful does not lead us into extravagance. We are capable at the same time of taking risks and of estimating them beforehand. Our city is an education to Greece. Author David Cartwright describes this as a eulogy of Athens itself in its beauty and glorification of the Athenian accomplishment. After lavishing praise on Athens and her people for all that they represent to the world and filling the audience with pride, Pericles speaks of the honor gained by those who have fallen in defense of such a magnificent city. He states, "This, then, is the kind of city for which these men nobly fought and nobly died. And it was for this reason that I spoke at such great lengths about our city, because I wanted to make it clear that there is much more at stake here than for those who lack our advantages." After appealing to the sense of pride and nobility of the people of Athens, and paying tribute to those who perished in her service, Pericles goes a step further in encouraging yet more sacrifice for the greater glory of Athens. The major issue I saw here was his failure to identify with the individual over the group. He failed to sympathize with those who lost their loved ones, so strong is his belief in the state. Nevertheless, the Athenians accept his conclusion, his call to fight for all that Athens is, and all that she can be in the future with the continued sacrifice of her people. Today we have touched on the finer points of Pericles' funeral oration, from its somber occasion in a country at war, its thorough analysis of a less than favorable audience, looking for consolation and guidance, to the character of Pericles himself, and the speech that made him one of the most revered orators of his time. As we saw through his carefully crafted funeral oration, Pericles persuaded the people of Athens that she must be defended at all costs, turning what was to be a simple speech honoring the dead into one of the greatest democratic calls to action of all time. In closing, I hope that I have given you some insight into this amazing speech, and perhaps inspired you to read it in its entirety. It is truly a speech for the ages. Thank you.